this. Yeah.
I'm calling the January 25th, 2018 meeting of the Mashpee Conservation Commission to order. Is there anyone in the audience who has something not on the agenda that you'd like to bring before the commission this evening? Then we'll go to you, Drew.
Yeah, the first items up on the agenda are the approval of two sets of meeting minutes. First meeting minutes are from December 14th, 2017. And we do have a quorum for both sets of minutes here present tonight.
Move we approve the minutes of, just for December 14th.
Second.
Barring any discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. You can vote.
No, not for that set of minutes. The next one you can, yeah. The next set of minutes is from January 11th, 2018.
Move for approval of the minutes of January 11, 2018.
I second that.
Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Tom wasn't. I wasn't on that.
He wasn't on that.
He wasn't on that, so.
But you
Yeah.
were.
Aye.
Yeah.
Okay, aye.
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 And did you vote in affirmative?
Yeah, I did, that's that.
Okay, thank you. The first item that we have as a pre-hearing agenda item, Mark Robinson is here from the Cape Cod Conservation Trust regarding the Littleford Conservation Area Conservation Restriction. Just so the commission remembers, this is a while back. The town acquired the Littleford Conservation parcel of land, which connects to our Johns Pond Conservation Area at the end of Quashnet Road, using Community Preservation Act funds. And one of the documents that needed to be prepared for that is a conservation restriction. So Mark's here tonight to present that to you, and you'll be signing the conservation restriction at the end of his presentation, or at the end of the meeting with the other permits. Mark.
Thank you, Drew. Mr. Chairman, my name is Mark Robinson. I'm the Executive Director of the Compact of Cape Cod Conservation Trusts. And I serve as an advisor to the Arenda Wildlife Land Trust, which is a major property owner in this Pine Barrens section of Mashpee out near Johns Pond. Excuse me. So I was approached by Drew and Town Council prior to the recording of the deed into the town of the Littleford parcels as to whether the Arenda Wildlife Land Trust would be willing to hold the required conservation restriction over this 24-acre property, woodland property. And I conferred with Arenda, and they said yes, they would be happy to hold it since they do have major properties in the area. And I've got just a little simple map I'll give to you, Mr. Chairman. You'll see the large parcels that Arenda owns just to the north of the Littleford area. So in any case, part of my work professionally is to draft and seek approvals for conservation restrictions, and I offered on behalf of Arenda and the town to prepare this one to meet the specifications of state approval. And so I've drafted it. I don't think it's been reviewed by town council yet, but I think what we're looking for, ultimately the selectmen have to approve this, and obviously town council would want to review it first, but we want the Conservation Commission to have looked at it and seek your approval and recommendation tonight.
Just pulling it up on a map so you can see where parcel's located.
Well, if we're not gonna have time to review it at the time, I think we need to at least have somebody walk through the documents.
I can provide a little bit of guidance on.
I mean, an overview, 30,000 feet.
Yeah. So the Community Preservation Act requires a perpetual conservation restriction to be placed with a third party outside of town government to provide an extra layer of protection for for the conservation properties that are coming into the town. And so the arrangement is typically to work with a local or regional land trust, which Arenda Wildlife Land Trust is. And so it's a contract between the town and the Arenda Wildlife Land Trust to provide the protections, give Arenda legal standing to enforce the prohibitions on non-conservation uses of the property. And so the document is based on a model that the state has for conservation restrictions, and is very similar to other restrictions that the town has placed on its conservation lands. It's essentially to keep the land in a natural condition while obviously giving the Conservation Commission the right to manage the property for conservation purposes.
Was this the parcel you and I walked sometime ago now?
I believe it is, yeah. It was a while back. This is 104 right here, and then there's a little triangular piece. I don't think you can see it too well in the image, but there's two separate parcels that have this CR placed on them. This is, just for your point of reference, this is the upper Quashnet Bogs, the Quashnet River, and all the adjacent lands around here are either owned by, deeded to the Conservation Commission or Arenda. And you've also got Mass Division of Fish and Wildlife land, some parcels here. Collectively, they're the Johns Pond Conservation Area. So this was one of the largest pieces of land that's actually within the mapped boundary of the Mashpee National Wildlife Refuge, and it's one of the largest parcels, one of the larger parcels that was, looking to be acquired, and now it has been. So the CR, as Mark had described, contains the same kind of language that you would see in any typical conservation restriction about uses, allowable and prohibited uses of conservation land. Pretty standard language. Does allow for hiking and trails, and then prohibited uses, include camping, fires, vehicular access, all the usual things that go along with any one of our conservation parcels. So, but it does go into pretty, lengthy detail about each one of those uses and the reasoning behind why they're allowed or prohibited. So, are there any questions on that?
I'm confused,
Yep.
I'm sorry. I have, the next item in my paperwork is the 118 booth. This gentleman is speaking to another project?
Yeah, you updated the agenda.
Yeah, I updated the agenda. Sorry, you don't have the most recent agenda.
Ah,
Yep. Sorry about that.
okay, so I don't know, there's nothing to back up what the gentleman is telling us, is that correct? There's nothing
No, it's
written?
right, there's a conservation restriction right there.
Right.
Oh, I don't have it. Thank you.
Esther's alone.
I'm sure I'm not gonna read this. Having walked that property.
If you,
years ago.
yeah, if you, if the commission wants more time so each one of the members can read through it, I don't think because town council still has to review it, so you can sign it at the next meeting, that's fine, there's no rush. So,
Okay, so
I
you
think
get
that-
us copies?
yeah, and I'll get you copies. I thought I had sent out copies already, but apparently I did not, so. Not a problem, there's no rush, so,
I mean, I'm
But-
confident everything is in order.
yeah, right.
It's just a little bit bad form to be signing something that we haven't had any chance to look at.
Sure. Did you have any questions for Mark while he's here?
Sure, or from you, are there any areas in this restriction that are unusual, to the other ones we have on similar plot properties? That we should think,
I don't believe so. I mean, I don't want to say it's a standard form,
Sure.
because it does have to reflect the characteristics of this particular property, but it's pretty straightforward.
no particular areas you want to, direct our attention to in there? Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty standard, yeah.
Yeah, as long as there's no rush, if there's any reason.
Yeah, and as you read through, if you have any questions when you're reading through about any of the specific language, I can forward them on to Mark, and he can provide answers, so we'll have at the next meeting.
Great.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Town council still has,
In parallel.
he still has to review, yeah, yep.
Okay, we should move on to the scheduled hearing. Calling the 6 o'clock hearing for Mark and Heidi Whalen, 104 Pimlico Pond Road. This is for a proposed vista pruning, and it is an NOI. If you please identify yourselves for the record.
Excuse me?
Please identify yourself for the record.
I'm Mark and Heidi Whalen, and we presently reside at 3 Christmas Street Lane in Halifax, Mass.
Before you start on the presentation, do you have the cards from the certified mailings?
I do.
Thank you.
Do you want copies or original?
Originals. Great, thank you.
I did receive one back.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
They called.
Okay, thank you.
And to help with, the meetings are recorded, it's good to use the mic if you can.
And you can take it off the stand if you'd like to.
Oh, that's good. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Yeah. So Mark and Heidi Whalen, we reside at 3 Christmas Street Lane in Halifax, Mass. We're asking for your consideration for permission to allow a vista pruning permit for our soon-to-be permanent residence at 104 Pimlico Pond Road. If allowed, our pruning will be in compliance with, as per Regulation 29, we'll continue to maintain the existing corridor, gravel roadway, as well as granted vista pruning. The wetland frontage of said property is 230 feet plus 15 feet of contour with a total of 245 feet. Based on the view corridor, with not to exceed 25%, we're requesting the area of the wetland frontage to be limited to 62 feet. We would also request to replace thorny briars on property with low land blueberry bushes or other low land plants. Thank you for your consideration. Any questions?
Could Drew or somebody explain the map that shows the boundaries of the property? I'm a little confused. You've got two areas that are in yellow, and,
2 areas?
well,
Looks
I
like
was
one.
counting that one and two.
Oh, I think it's just one singular. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So that is,
Yeah, so that, that yellow highlighted area is the Vista corridor that the applicant had just described as 62 feet in width, which is 25% of the overall frontage. 25% under Regulation 29, which deals with buffer zones and buffer strips, and also has all the protocols for vista pruning. When you're calculating how much vista a given property has, you measure their linear frontage along the wetland edge, so the length of the property where it meets the pond front, and then you're allowed 25% of that overall width as your vista pruning corridor, so that yellow highlight represents the 25% of the frontage. In that 25%, there's also specific protocols that get conditioned into the permit if you were to approve it. That calls for selective pruning. Mature sized trees that are 5 inches in caliper or more, 30% of the branches per tree selectively pruned, and then saplings which are 5 inches or less, up to 20% can be removed that exist in the corridor, and then any shrub level vegetation can be maintained down to a height of 5 feet. So those are the standard protocols for vista pruning. The one thing I would like to see is, I know you mentioned the removal of thorny briars. Briars, I know that if they're encroaching into walking paths and things like that, they can typically be removed in those types of scenarios. If they're in areas where it's not common foot traffic or they're not strangling out native vegetation, they do provide good cover for wildlife. So we wouldn't want to see them. I think that can be determined with a site visit. That's what I would recommend for the briars, and we can see what you're looking to remove and what should stay if that situation applies. So I have no other comments.
We would appreciate a site visit just so that we can go over it before we.
Yeah, it's part of the condition of the project anyway. For the first 2 years of vista pruning, we require a site visit if you have a contractor to meet at the property with the contractor, so we can go over what's to be cut. You do that for the first 2 years, and then if everything goes well, then you can apply for a certificate of compliance to carry on vista pruning in perpetuity. So you wouldn't have to keep coming back for a new permit. It would be in perpetuity.
Thanks.
Does anyone in the audience have any comments or questions?
I would move that we close an issue in regards to the application of Mark and Heidi Wayland at 104 Pimlico Pond Road.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
I
Aye? Aye.
Since you have a call.
Yeah,
All
yeah,
right.
thank you.
Okay. All right.
well, all set.
Thank you.
Together with Drew, and he'll give you the order of conditions.
Yeah, we'll go over the orders. Yep,
Set up a time.
yeah,
That'd be great.
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You too.
Opening the 6:03 hearing, Save Company Bay Incorporated at 0 Rear Waiting Place Road. This is proposed maintenance, dredging, and beach nourishment. As requested by the applicant, it was continued from November 9th to address NHESP concerns and to submit revised plans. This is an NOI.
So this has been, and I apologize, it's not reflected on your agenda, but they did send in last-minute notice to be continued again to February 22nd at 6:03 PM.
I gather that this is, the delay is the agency's fault rather than the homeowner.
Well, yeah, it actually is with the Pompanesett Spit. It's Save Pompanesett Bay is the property. Then they are working still with Natural Heritage. I think they're very close now.
But that's the holdup,
That's the holdup, yes, yeah.
so the homeowner's not at fault.
No, it has nothing to do with an incomplete application or anything like that. It's just a matter of working things out with another agency that's gonna have the ultimate stamp of approval on this particular area, because it has rare species habitat, piping plover habitat, shorebirds, so Pompanesett Spit, so.
Hasn't they been granted this permit in the past? Or is this different?
It's different because they're proposing a different slope for the dunes, to recreate or beef up the dunes. And the disagreement, from my understanding, is that, the steepness that they're proposing on the plans that they submitted, there's Natural Heritage reviewers think that it's too steep and it could be an impediment to wildlife movement from predators, things like that. So that's what they're trying to work on and it ties in also, there's an administrative approval request, which is on your pre-hearing agenda tonight, which I'm gonna table for the next meeting, because that ties in with what, Wiz Whole Group is proposing. It's the town dredge permit where they put the dredge spoils on Pompanesett Spit, and they're trying to, possibility of working on that permit to put some sand down under that permit through an administrative request proposal, therefore reducing the steepness of the slope, going beyond the work limit that Save Pompanesett Bay has. But it's all very cart before the horse right now, so get into a lot of detail.
Do you have a motion?
I would move we continue to
February 22nd
22nd
at 6:03.
6:03 PM.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
That's approved for the
Continuation.
continuation. Opening the 6:06 hearing for Daniel E. Marsters, trustee, 49 Palmer Road. This is for the proposed construction of a single-family dwelling, garage, septic system upgrade, and landscaping hardscaping. At the request of the applicant, this was continued from January 11th, 2018, to submit revised plans. There's an NOI.
Good evening, Mike Ball from Marsh Matters Environmental. I'm here with Dan Marsters, the property owner and applicant for the property at 49 Palmer Road. It's a single-family house development project. Resource areas are riverfront area and bordering vegetated wetland. Project, we submitted a revised plan to you. That was the reason for the continuance. We've reduced the amount of riverfront area alteration. We've adjusted the lawn area, and the house footprint has been adjusted slightly. This property is under a purchase and sale agreement, so we just needed a little bit of time to discuss with the potential homeowners regarding the design of the house.
Thank you.
Cards there. Some of the key things about this project.
There's a laser pointer here if you want to use the yellow button.
Look at that.
Yeah.
So, got a single-family house. We're along the Quashnet River. The golf course is to the west and to the north of the river. This is an old abandoned cranberry bog. If you're out there, you can tell quite distinctly that this at one point was a cranberry bog. And then you've got a steep slope. The base of that slope is roughly the bordering vegetated wetland boundary. So on the property, riverfront area extends almost to the extent of the property, not quite. You can see the 100-foot buffer zone to the BVW boundary. Our limit of work is follows the 50-foot buffer here, and then it comes straight across the property boundary here. So this area was an area where we realized there was no need to disturb as much area in the corner of the property here. This property was cleared at one point years ago. If you've been out there, it's almost entirely seeded pitch pines and scrub oak and herbaceous vegetation. I'm guessing that when they created this development, they probably altered a lot of the land on a lot of these properties, built some and then left others to wait for development. This one was one of a few of the development that was never built upon. There's a house on this lot over here. The lot over here is undeveloped. The amount of riverfront area and buffer zone combined, which is under your jurisdiction, is just over 15,000 square feet. Calculation for lawn area, 10%, that is 1,537 square feet of lawn. We've met that lawn area requirement. This site was in National Heritage jurisdiction a couple of years ago, but with the new mapping as of this past August, this whole area has been taken out of heritage jurisdiction. I'm not sure what the species it was mapped for, but it's no longer mapped. So natural heritage review wasn't required. Any questions?
Just to show you some, you can see the location of the property. It's one of only a few remaining undeveloped lots in this particular subdivision, which is associated with Quashnet Valley Golf Course. But you can see the Quashnet River running behind that part of the subdivision. And just some shots. It's all grown over with emergent pines, so it's kind of hard to get an idea from, if you were to look at it from the street. You know, the staking is easily hidden behind all the trees, so it's kind of a tough thing to stake out. So, but going back to the plan, riverfront, as you know, carries a 200-foot zone of jurisdiction. That is considered the entire river. Riverfront doesn't have a buffer zone. It's just 200 feet from the mean annual high water on either side of the river is considered to be riverfront. So under the regulations, where a 200-foot riverfront area exists, this is regulation 33, a minimum 100-foot wide area of natural vegetation must be left undisturbed or provided. So when you look at the setback line that's just behind the property line on the plan, you'll see the 100-foot to mean annual high water, MAHW. That's the delineation of the actual riverfront. So you can see that that 100-foot setback is maintained as part of this plan. Also,
What do you
Oh,
mean by
sorry.
that?
so this,
I know with the line here, the 100.
no,
right?
that's not the line I'm referring to.
Oh.
Mean annual high water, right here, this blue line. This one.
Okay, because it,
Because that's mean annual high water, this is the delineation of the Quashnet River, and between these is 100 feet.
all right, I was
So
thinking
that's-
that you were extending.
Yeah, there's
that
two
out.
different,
Yeah.
two different delineations. You see bordering vegetated wetland and riverfront. But I just wanted to point out that that 100-foot, or is also known as the inner riparian zone, is to be left undisturbed as part of this project. So, in that it meets the standards for riverfront. Also, it's recommended that septic systems be located as far away from riverfront as possible, so they have done that as part of this proposal. Put the septic system right up as close to the road as they could get it. So it's as far away from the wetlands as you can get on the lot. So it meets that performance standard for riverfront as well. I did have just a question on that blue highlighted hash mark in the upper right corner. Remove shrub pine and restore with shrubs as shown on the planting plan. Just curious what's going on there? What?
Yeah, the original plan that was submitted had that deleted out.
Okay.
When I worked with EWI, Pete McEntee,
Yeah.
he added that in because we have in the past provided planting plans
Mm-hmm.
but in other towns. And what has happened is when the property gets transferred, the homeowner will often want some input on the design.
Yeah.
They understand the lawn limitations.
Right.
And so we took that out, and before the revised plan was submitted, I forgot to have that removed. So we don't,
Okay. So that's not part of.
so that's not part, we don't have a planting plan.
Yeah.
It's something certainly we'd ask, if you required one, it could be conditioned.
Mm-hmm.
I think the key thing here is that the lawn area was kept.
Right.
But we don't have specific specs for areas outside the lawn area.
Okay.
I'm hoping that's acceptable.
I think that's fine. Just as long as the homeowners understand that, and if the commission was to issue an order of conditions, that they get it, that, understand that they become familiar with the conditions, so they know that they're under jurisdiction on the lot. Because that can get lost between the developer and whoever owns the house. We want to make sure that that information is transferred over.
They're well aware we're here today.
Yeah, okay,
You know.
good. So then they know the process, they're aware of the process.
And going back to that blue hatched area, I had asked Pete McEntee, I just asked him, was it necessary to alter as much riverfront area? I asked him if he could potentially reduce it some, and so
Mhm.
he then said, sure, we'll
Right.
just cut that back. So we just wanted to point out that the riverfront area alteration was reduced by 480 square feet.
Okay. No other comments?
Is there not another home along that same stretch of Palmer Road where it turns left and heads up the hill? There's a number of open spots in there, probably developable lots. Is there not another lot there which has been approved and there's an order of conditions out on it now?
I think that's probably about 3 lots down.
3 lots.
Three lots down.
When I went out there, I said, we've been here before.
Yes.
Yeah, that's 75, that was approved a couple of years ago,
Okay.
and I think it's now been cleared, so if you've gone out there, you probably.
Yes, it certainly changed. That's why I was wondering
Yeah.
whether we got the cart before the horse, but that's not important. The point is that each one of these lots are owned individually, so this is not a subdivision. You're doing
Oh,
lot
yeah, so-
by lot.
Correct.
Okay. Really, no questions?
Are there any questions from the audience?
I would move that we close an issue in regards to the application of Daniel Marsters, trustee for 49 Palmer Road.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Opening the 609 hearing for Donna Beckett, level wall and soil association trustee, 161 Timber Lane Drive. This is for the proposed construction of single-family home, garage, septic system upgrade, landscaping and hardscaping. This was continued from December 14, 2017, at the request of the applicant, revised plan. This is an NOI.
Good evening, members of the commission. I'm Brad Holmes with Environmental Consulting Restoration, assisting Jack Landers Colley Engineering on this project. I know this is a continued hearing. The commission has reviewed this project. I've been involved in the mitigation plan and assistance in that end. Jack wasn't available to attend the meeting tonight, so he asked that I assist, which I'm happy to do. My understanding that the majority of the details have been presented and worked out with the commission, and to include the mitigation plan. As you know, it's proposed construction of single-family dwelling with appurtenances, and that follows the replanting schedule. Other than those details, I know that Jack has submitted some additional data to the commission with profile, and if there's anything I can help or answer, I'd be happy to do that.
Okay. Drew, do you have any comments?
I'll defer to the commission first if anyone has any questions.
Yeah, it looks like, what we asked for the change in the grade. Is the grade at the front of the house now, elevation 97 coming across there?
The profile, I brought those with me. Front of the house.
I'd seen that, come down from Miller's, so I
Right, the
figured
first-
it's
Right, that's about, correct.
2
The
feet
first
below
floor
the top of the
elevation would
first
be
floor.
99, and then you can see the new grade going with that, around that 97, I'd say.
So, and then at the stairs at the rear at the walkout, so we're saying we're at 85.76 coming upstairs and it's dropping from there.
Correct. And the contours, you can see on the plan, the contours are here for more data. If you would, take that 87.76 here, you can see the topography.
So that deck's gonna be about 15 feet up in the air.
Correct.
And I saw the detail of the stairs going down to the pond. Looks is something. Is that, Drew, have you looked at the stair? You fine with that layout? And-
Yeah, it's typical what we see for, that type of slope. So just to clarify, the 6x12 dock at the bottom, is that going to be a permanent platform? That's not like a float with because I don't see any gangway, so I'm guessing that's just going to be a leg-supported platform.
Correct.
Yeah.
The stairs would end right
Extend-
on top of the platform to the deck,
Okay.
elevated above the pond elevation,
Right.
2 feet above the 64, 2 feet above the elevation of the
Yeah.
pond.
And I did have a discussion with Jack on that, because I know that platforms aren't usually what you would see in a dock type situation, but given the steepness of this bank, if they were to have, and I have seen it in some other areas, if they were to have let's say a gangway at the end of the stairway attached to a float, you don't see many people leave. Well, there's one or two things you could do. If you're going to leave your float into if you're not going to take it out of the water and you have it on an inland water body, you can have a bubbler that keeps the ice free around it, or you got to haul it out, or you have to store it in some area where there's beach or where it's not going to go resting over native vegetation. Well, none of those options are available on this lot because it's a very steep bank and it's vegetation right down to the bottom of the bank where it meets the water. So even though it doesn't meet the design standards of what you typically see for a dock given its dimensions, I still think it's an appropriate to have a platform rather than a float and gangway, or it's an option that I would, I don't have an issue with. I don't think it's really violating any performance standards other than the design protocols that we have under Regulation 27 for docks and piers. But I think just given the site conditions and the steepness of the bank and there's nowhere to store it, if it was to be a float, that it's a fine alternative.
Well, removable docks are normal in ponds,
Right.
but just getting it out of there, storing it.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm sure the owner will understand that it'll probably be destroyed occasionally. When there's heavy ice,
Yeah, it's a risk to leave, unless they put a bubbler or something like that, because I've seen docks just, floats get destroyed and iced over inland water bodies.
We have some
over the
boulders
years.
this big that got put up on our beach this winter. It just
Yeah.
happens sometimes that way. You know.
Right.
You
Yeah.
get 3 or 4 inches of ice and it wants to move, it moves.
Yeah,
But, that's, you know, if we don't have any specific.
there's nothing really, I mean, it would be an allowable dimension if it was a float. So it's the difference is it's got legs instead of, resting on the water and attached to a gangway.
It's not going to be made with a treated timber that would be damaging to the environment.
Right.
More so if it got loose.
And we can condition that and put that in.
The stairway post, been supported by sonotubes on that hillside?
All hand dug and installed with the post would be right into the ground. See here, just 4x4 posts, hand dug in. There isn't a detail there for a sonotube, right? Doesn't need to be with a smaller stairway.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if that meant code compliance or building code.
Oh, right,
Stairways,
yeah,
You
yeah.
might need a sonotube or something. You can't, I don't know if you can put a post directly into the ground.
We've done it before, but if they need sonotube, if there is a requirement for a sonotube, we can have that information brought back to Drew
Yeah.
and discuss it.
There's also that new type of footing I saw with the crossbars or something like
Diamond piers.
diamond piers. Is that mostly for like sandy soils or
Yeah,
coastal
it's
areas, or
cracks and-
it can work anywhere in any kind of situation, right? Yeah. It's a much less.
I don't know what the slope of the hillside, I don't know. You kinda
Yeah, it might need yeah, that's the only thing that probably wouldn't make it happen there, but less intrusive than sonotubes if it has
Right,
to come
and
to that.
it's on that bank, it'd be hard to
Yeah,
get
yeah.
the materials.
Question in regards to the drain that is on the north side of the property down that line, which is gonna, intended to take the waters that flow off from the edge of pavement down to and protect the home from any water on that slope. And you've got a drain in there and so forth, and a lot of heavy crushed stone. I'm just wondering, maybe it's my naivete, that, what's gonna happen with that water when it gets down in heavy rainstorms, such as we've had most recently? Where is it gonna drain? I mean, it just seems like a hole in the ground is not necessarily the answer, but it's gotta be diffused in some way, or is it gonna blow out the coastal bank or the bank?
I mean, with the mitigation plan that you see, I think it's just my observation, but once it's all said and done, I mean, I think you're talking about a situation that's pretty rare overall to get that much rain where it's going to cause where it would cause any sort of runoff situation down the bank, because it's a very thickly vegetated bank. And when it's buffered with the mitigation that they're offering up, I don't think you're going to see much adverse impact, even in storm conditions like that with that much rain. I don't see that resulting in any sort of channelization or runoff. But if there's certain things that could be done to increase the infiltration, that's something that we can put in as a condition.
What is that surround the drain itself is large enough to collect before it needs to drain?
Right,
That's-
right.
And perhaps that circle is big enough so that it could collect for a while before it needs to drain.
Right.
Is there like a little berm specified on the edge of the driveway and that going down, drain the funnel of
Right,
water?
the grades around there direct the water to obviously to the,
Right.
the basin or the
Mhm.
infiltrator there. In my experience on heavy rain events, more than a normal, they just put this, saturate that pit and it just starts to meander out.
Yeah.
Not, I think the way that it's evenly graded, you're not gonna find that it's heading in one direction, it's just gonna overflow the yard.
Okay, fine. Okay, I'm happy.
So the last thing I just wanted to mention was that, I mean, as you're all aware, they are asking for a waiver from the mitigation standards because the site is mitigation constrained, so they're putting in as much as they can. So what I had suggested at the last meeting was we have this condition when it comes to mitigation for a 3-year monitoring and maintenance period, to extend it by 1 more year to 4 years, to ensure that this mitigation not only is put in as specified, but also thrives and is successful. So that's my recommendation as an added condition for.
My understanding then is that under the regulations and bylaws, we can grant this level of exemption, given that there is no reasonable alternative.
Correct.
The owner has built a very modest home on a difficult lot. He's done everything he could to mitigate under those circumstances. I believe we're free to approve. Although, you know, when you, at first blush, it looks impossible. The rules do allow for the situations where it isn't possible. That's, I believe, where we stand.
Well, were we clear on the size of the well, the retention well? I mean, if it's a 55-gallon drum or whatever, you know, that's not gonna be adequate. I would think this would have to be something larger and more robust than your average dry well.
The dry well that has been designed by Jack is a 4-foot wide by 12-inch deep, 1.5 to 3-inch crushed stone. I can't speak on the engineering calculations that he sized that for, but I'm sure he had a purpose on that. I didn't design the well to be able to give you more data than that, but it's designed to handle the runoff from the house. The rest, it's not designed to accommodate the whole site. So I don't think there's, as I said before, in an abnormal storm, yes, it's not gonna, it could overspill just like any other yard would flood and then dissipate. That's all I can give you on that, on the well.
Well, it strikes me that we do have an attempt to prevent water from coming in onto the property from the street. And so all you really need to do to not create a worse situation in a storm is make sure that you can drain that area that's been paved, that isn't otherwise, you know, in its normal state. And I mean, I'm willing to accept the engineer's word that he's done that appropriately. Just
We
from-
could, yeah, and just as a suggestion, we could add in a condition that would allow the commission to require, you know, mitigation measures or offset measures if runoff becomes, you know, more than just an occasional issue. It starts to get
You have 4 years
exacerbated.
to watch it.
Right,
If there were signs
right.
of a gully forming, the edge going up lawn or something, I mean, we could.
That we could have them come with some sort of additional measures, such as a French drain or some other increased size of the leaching
Would be
pit.
a logical place for a rain garden, you know, make a large area there around the drain so that if it should overflow, the drain itself, you know, just a
Yeah.
big, large swale.
Yeah,
Well, I believe that this site doesn't have a groundwater issue, a high groundwater issue in the sense that we're so high above the area.
It shouldn't.
So it can always be dug deeper.
that's true,
with
yeah,
more
yeah,
stone if it's found that it's not sized
right.
for the large enough storm.
Yeah.
Basically talking about the driveway runoff.
Yeah,
As long as there's a
anything from
berm
the
at the street.
will end up going in that direction.
Right.
As long as there's a berm at the
It's not
street.
just the
Yeah.
driveway, I mean, it's the rest of the property in that corner.
Well, yes, but the rest of the property is in its natural state, I mean, all the way up from the front, past the limit of work towards the road.
Well, I think the
And it's
idea of
also
doing that,
around, you know,
of a
It's all
observation.
gravel and sandy soil with natural vegetation.
Yeah, it's gonna be monitored for 4 years.
For 4 years.
Yeah.
We'll know.
And with
We'll know if
language that
it's-
says that
That's, yeah,
at the discretion of the commission,
right.
the homeowner will make improvements.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's, I think it's a good thing to put into the order of conditions. It's just that stipulation. The commission reserves the right to, you know, require additional measures should any performance standards be violated or any conditions, you know, exacerbate erosion, things like that.
Make that explicit so that it's
Yeah.
clear to the owner.
Exactly, yeah.
It's not working, they'll be in here asking permission Basement is split.
Fair enough, yeah. Are there any comments or questions from the audience? Gentlemen?
I would move that the close addition in regards to the application of Donna Beckett, level one, trustee at 161 Timberlane Drive.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay.
Opening the, no,
Nope, that's it.
that's it.
That is all she wrote.
Would you like
Do you
to
have a certificate?
continue with the pre-post program?
Yeah, yeah, we have, next up is Dylan Stevens. He's come before you before. He's the gentleman who created the videos of a couple of our parcels so that we link to a YouTube channel on our website so people can get a videography look of what our parcels look like, some of the highlights. So we met with Dylan over the last week, and we asked him to put together a proposal for some other projects, and you should have this packet in your blue folders, 118 group, and Dylan will go over the details of what they're presenting. And what I would ask is that the commission, based on the presentation, you can ask questions of either Dylan or myself or Caitlin, and then vote to authorize the funds if you feel that it's worthwhile.
Hi, guys, members of the commission. Yes, I was in front of you guys a couple months ago, and the videos we were doing were for John's Pond, and then the Mashpee River Woodlands and Santuit. And a lot of that was drone-based aerial videography with some natural wildlife videos, clips incorporated, and it came out really nice. And you guys now have that on your website, and I kind of proposed that and pitched that to you guys because I know how popular video is, and I know that, you know, a lot of towns are communicating to their constituents through video, so I saw a lot of value in that, you guys saw the value in that, and I went forward and I did it. And so Caitlin and Andrew approached me recently with a couple other projects they'd like to cover, including the Herring Run, the Fitch, Johansson, and DeRosier properties, the Jehu Pickerel Cove properties, and the Pollinator Gardens, seeking some nice videos for those properties as well. So I've allotted about, you know, close to 30 to 35 hours worth of work to get all that done, close to 10 hours per property, and then including editing and post-production, and averaging that out at about industry average rate of about $100 an hour. We're looking at about, you know, $3,000 to get those properties filmed and into a format where you guys can put on your website, put it on your YouTube channel, and kind of promote it on your platforms. Any questions for me?
How long have we had the prior set of videos?
Yeah.
What type of feedback have you been getting from people?
Positive feedback, yeah. I do need to do a bit more promotion, but people, it is a really good way to introduce people. And I think the next summer will be a real gauge of it, because that's when most people are here, and that's when we'll be able to get it more in their minds than to kind of just relaunch and let them know we're standing it. But I have our Facebook page. There was an article in the Enterprise, so when these next set of videos are done, we'll go ahead with promoting it at that time. So,
Given that videos are popular, I wonder if it might be possible to arrange matters so you don't have to go down so deeply into the menu.
Oh,
That was one of
To
my,
know
Yeah.
that there's a video in there at some point.
Yeah, we're gonna move it to the forefront of the page when you open it up, so it'll be right there when you first log on to the conservation. You click department's conservation page, and that'll be right on the main page, because that's the best way. Yeah, you're right. It is kind of buried right now, and it's hard to find.
I mean, you can go find it if you know it's there, but
Right.
if videos are going to be one of the things that attracts people to our site, then they
Right.
need to know there's a video before they've gotten into our site.
Sure, we'll make sure that they're promoted sufficiently, absolutely.
Right.
Is there audio that goes along with the,
Yeah,
Well,
you can,
so for these videos, yeah, the audio is basic, it's up-tempo music. For some of these other projects, we'd like to make them a little more educational based. So we'd like to get either Caitlin or Andrew or someone else out there discussing, you know, a big scope, a big focus was the herring run and discussing, you know, the journey these herring travel through, having an educational piece. So it's a little more complex than these, which are, you know, aerial with some nice music, they're nice shots. It's a little more complex because it requires that educational piece, but again, I think that provides more value. Talking to the audience about, you know, what's going
Yeah.
on in the conservation lands around here.
you could see a fifth grade teacher saying, class, we're gonna look at some of these videos and, you know, incorporate that into her
Right,
program.
yeah, exactly, and I think, as you guys mentioned, when I went to go find it on the website, I couldn't find it, and I made the videos, so I think, you know, my role is to present you with that footage and those clips, and, you know, produced and ready to go. And I think, you know, what you guys do with that is really important in terms of who's seeing it and how it's being promoted. If you guys are investing in this, you wanna get people seeing it, you wanna get some, you know, some miles out of it, and so I think that's a very good point as well.
Another option for promotion is that you can deal with Mashpee TV, do a public service announcement.
that's true, yeah.
With a different wrinkle for each one of these parcels, you know, 2 minutes, something on that idea. You know, it runs periodically, off and on during the day, on channel 22, 99 AM, as well as 18. So those are available too. You just see Bill May at the studio.
Right,
They
Yep.
love public service announcements.
right,
Yeah,
right.
Yep.
It's a perfect place for Drew and
Mm.
Caitlin to participate.
yeah.
A face they know.
So, yeah, we do feel that this is based on the videos that were created already and what we, oh, yeah, sorry.
So you're
That was
going after these 4 areas? These are
Yeah,
four
these are the 4 areas that we discussed. Fitch, Joe, sorry.
There's a couple on the back, on this page over here as well.
The Heron Run, Pollinator Gardens.
Yeah.
Right,
Where the funds coming from?
So the funding would come from, we have a lands maintenance account that's not part of the town's general budget. The source of the account was from when the town leased cranberry bogs, specifically the upper Quashnet bogs. And these were revenues from the barrel sales of cranberries from the grower that the town conservation department used. And the fund is set up to either, first and foremost, when it had more money in it, it was used to purchase land. And then get down to a balance where that's no longer feasible, but we can still purchase equipment, services, anything in the interest of maintaining or promoting conservation land. That's what the fund is for. So that's the fund that we would use. And, yeah, there's adequate funding in there for this.
What is the current size of that fund?
It's about 224,000.
I thought it was actually lower than that last time I asked. It's,
No, that's about, yeah.
So no money is being added to that.
No, it is not a replenished source. We have another account that's called a revolving account, and that's where a percentage of the wetland fees gets put into that. So that's a replenishing account, and that's used for, you know, in-house purchases for the conservation department, things like that. So
That's maybe the account I was thinking of.
yeah, that's a little less.
Also, just wanted to mention that it's a really helpful tool too when we do promote the land stewards program and to just in this day and age too with videos being so prominent, especially in these short little dynamic types. So I'll be updating you in a few minutes about a couple of things in the near future, but these videos will definitely be very helpful in the promotion of that.
Okay, then it's up to us to make sure that if someone is wondering what's going on in Mashpee and goes online to find out,
Mhm.
find the video.
Yeah.
Yes.
right, that's the hope.
Yeah.
If I remember right, some of these videos at least are good for people to go out and find the trails and to go to the areas.
Well, yeah, the trail map, the interactive trail map has the trail map and the video, if there's a video associated with it. So they all have
Okay.
the trail guide with it, so that tells you the address of the parcel, and it has the map as well. So you would be able to pretty much find all the information there, and then the interactive trail map itself is the map of Mashpee, so you would know, okay, I'm either if you're near or far, or where they are in relation to each other in town. So, those are all connected to the trail map. So it would be it's a pretty full picture of what's going on out there.
Right, so we have this, this is our conservation page. Getting onto the main page, you've got all these sidebars here, and this is the main page where we'll put it. So it'll become, right at the forefront when people log on to our page. There'll be a link right here. It's a pretty easy thing to do. But currently, it's right here under Things to Do and See on Mashpee Conservation Lands, and then you go to Trail Map Interactive, and it'll download a map of the town. It gives you a little welcome message here. And then you zoom in, the trails are all highlighted in different colors. And you just double tap, so if you want to go to, say, to a pond, just tap it once, and then you've got the link to the video and then the trail guide. So, and that's something we need to.
1,000 words.
Yeah. So this.
Video's worth a million.
Yeah. So there's the trail map, and then you go back. To the trail guide, and then you can check out the video. But this will be, like I said, this will be put on the main page instead of buried under that link. So it's, people will never know it's there right now. So we'll definitely fix that ASAP.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
We rack our brain with ways to make the page more usable, but
Yeah.
there's so much information.
We got a lot of information on there. We need to probably cut some of it out too because it's outdated.
Probably.
So we'll
Sounds
work on that. Yeah.
I usually add to it.
Was a comment. It sounds like to me, it might be good to do some narration
Yeah.
through this.
Mm-hmm.
To me, to engage people for this amount of time
Right.
with just the photographs,
Yeah.
I think is more challenging.
Mm-hmm.
I think also some of the overlays, like white overlays of copy that kind of drift in and fade out.
Yeah.
With some information, in other words, a 15-mile trail would be nice.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Wild berry bushes or
Mhm.
something can be seen.
Yeah.
The special bird can be sometimes
Mhm.
seen nesting in this area.
Right.
Some things like that, so that we learn a little bit, sort of, and maybe engage more. The second question I had was, how easy is it to find on YouTube? Forget, finding it at the town of Mashpee, but in other words, to have people find us globally, that find out this town has, good conservation lands and places to discover.
Yeah. I mean that's.
Yeah, I mean, you guys, so.
Is
from what I-
is who owns this, is whose channel is
This
it?
is-
It's the town's.
Town of
It's the
Mashpee?
town's channel, so if anyone
Okay.
searches Mashpee,
Yeah.
they'll probably find Mashpee Town Hall, probably find a couple different Mashpee channels.
Right.
Where you guys rank on that, I'm not exactly sure,
Mhm.
but it's not, no one's gonna just stumble upon this. If anyone's looking, at this point, if anyone's looking for it, they'll find it with trouble. I run a web design and a video marketing company, and what we generally try and do is, when we push these on social media, we have other accounts sharing this stuff. The police department, the fire department, some of these other people who have, large audiences in the town, sharing these videos and having everybody who, really is in the town seeing these videos, just to kind of get them to click and wonder, okay, I've never been here, I didn't even know this was in Mashpee, kind of changes their view on what's around them. So, and I agree, the effort on this one is to provide a little more educational, a little more interest, a little more, that narration, that audio of what's going on is definitely a focus on this next round of video.
Right. Yeah. And I agree. I think that's a great idea to have like narration and just more details about, where the trails are, what some of the highlights are, what's the unique features of this parcel. And I'm particularly excited about the herring run videos.
And we're gonna copyright all this material.
It's all yours.
The last question I had was, is it possible, for example, when you go onto those maps, you just sort of see these, rather than being able to pinpoint and go to a certain location, you just see sort of like a spaghetti effect of
Right.
trails.
Right.
Would it be possible to have actually certain areas that would be like an icon on those?
Right.
And to really, so people know that that's interactive.
Yeah, there's
Yeah, we
some
can-
capabilities that I can pursue with the GIS coordinator. Who will help me put this together.
And could that, a place where it's an icon, could that be a 360, simple, set up a camera and do that in the same way that Google does that for stores or Mashpee Commons? Or
All right, yeah,
Like a street map view.
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Interesting.
yeah.
Just a suggestion.
Yeah, so, we're trying to keep this thing within the scope of the, what we're trying to accomplish here, and so there's a lot we wanna do with Mashpee. This is the next chunk, it's the next piece, kind of our relationship moving forward, so.
Yeah, I can have, I guess depending on how far in or out you're zoomed into the map too, the labels may get triggered at some point, in there. I just saw like Noisy Bull Trail was labeled, but I
Yeah.
think there also might be somewhat arbitrary in that, they can all be labeled better.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the default base map too that comes up because they kind of show up the best there, even though it is kind of, a darker version, but the base map you can change as well, so it'll let you know, so you have different information on those.
Right.
Are you constrained by the design of the town website at this particular point?
No.
Well, I was just utilizing an existing software that was for the town interactive map. So, I wouldn't know the additional capabilities without speaking to Clay. But it sounds like he's very willing to work with me on these things, and if it can be done, it will be done, kind of thing, so.
So the total proposal is for $3,000. Yeah.
That's a fixed price contract?
Yes, that's a fixed price. So basically, because we want to capture the transition of seasons throughout these conservation plan, we want to get a little bit of the winter transitioning to spring into summer. This contract is over the course of the next 8 months. So we promise to deliver the agreed upon videos after we've spent enough time capturing this transformation in Mashpee, the foliage, life coming back in the spring. So you can't really expect to see any of these videos before July or August, when we want to get the herring run in April and when that starts to develop. And so this is kind of getting the agreement down so that we can move forward and get everything we need to get by August. But it is a fixed price, yes.
We need a
Yes, you need to take a formal vote to release funds from the lands and maintenance account for $3,000 for this videography services.
Someone like to so move?
I would move that we approve $3,000 from fund,
Lands and maintenance account.
the conservation maintenance account for this
Land.
particular purpose project
Lands and maintenance.
of land maintenance account.
Close enough.
Duly resolved in my words. That's the motion.
We need a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Yes.
Yes?
Aye.
Thank you.
Approved.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Good job.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
That's all you guys need from me?
Make us hear you're free to go. Hey, Caitlin's going to give you some updates and some things. Thank you, Don. And I'll pass around the permits to be signed while Caitlin's going over some things.
What's his first name again?
I
Dylan.
don't usually stand,
Yeah.
I guess I will tonight. So, just to kind of piggyback off of Dylan's presentation, the Mashpee Library recently received a STEM grant, and part of that is to collaborate with the Mashpee Conservation Department and other departments as well, but I had met with a couple people from there a few weeks ago, and we discussed presentations for March and April to promote the Land Stewards Program and the Herring Count Program. And this is just an example of how the videos would help to supplement those types of presentations. So I'm still in the process of creating those, but once they're established and then the presentations occur at the library, I think it'll set a precedent for, a repeatable program year after year, potentially. Their grant runs out in September, but in the meantime, this is part of their obligations. So we had initially sent a letter of support, and now this is the follow-through aspect of it. We plan to do on March 3rd, it's tentative, that would be our presentation on the herring count program, which starts about April 1st, give or take, depending on the conditions, but that's about when the counts start. So that would be a way to introduce it to the families. It kind of, it targets 3rd through 6th graders, but it's also really a family kind of event. So hopefully that'll be successful, and then hopefully sometime in April we'll also have a presentation on the Land Stewards Program again, utilizing the interactive town map too, and videos, and trying to make it as kid-friendly, family-friendly as possible. So kind of along the same lines, I also had just recently met with the Mashpee Environmental Club and just gave them information too on the herring count program and the Mashpee Land Stewards and any other way that they can help the town. So that may hopefully be fruitful. High school kids, I'm just kidding. No, they're great. They're fantastic, and they were really. They seemed really interested in what's going on. I just have to make sure we do some follow through with them on that. This past week I went on the Coonamessett River Restoration Tour. Drew had gone out as well. I don't know if you guys have been out there, but I highly recommend it. I'm sorry if Drew had already gone over this, but it's comparable to the Child's River Restoration and the Quashnet River Restoration. So it's really, it's in its final stages, I think, for this particular phase.
Yeah,
of the
phase. There's
project.
2 phases. The
Yeah.
first phase, yeah. And I think it's approaching the final parts of the first phase 1.
But it's a big old mess, but it's really quite remarkable what they've done and how this really should benefit the fisheries there as well. Sorry, I'm just kind of jumping around a little bit, but one of as of today, I wrote a new citation for illegal dumping. It's the first time I've been able to do this in quite some time since we've run into a snag with our trail cameras, but that's being addressed. But fortunately, I was able to find out who the person was and wrote them the violation today. So hopefully that'll go through without a hitch. I don't anticipate any problems. It's a slam dunk, I think.
Pizza.
Did you send it to him in the mail, or did you knock
Yeah,
on his door?
we send it in the mail. It has to be distributed to the clerks and the police. I have to write a report. I mean, this is probably the 16th one I've written since I started.
So just
Give or take.
regular U.S. mail? No.
Certified.
Certified mail.
Certified mail.
Yeah, so
yeah.
you know when they
Yeah.
received it, and
Yeah.
they have 21 days to pay until it goes to the police
Mashpee
station and then goes to the
residence?
court.
Falmouth.
Yeah, it's in Falmouth. I've been to a couple magistrate hearings. Typically, people just pay because they know that they've been caught red-handed. So, but with that said, if and when a hearing has to happen, I will gladly attend, as I have in the past. So I guess that was. It's just been very frustrating lately not being able to hold anyone accountable for the illegal dumping, and it really needs to stop.
You really impressed my neighbor, who came to
Oh,
my
did
house
she?
today
Did
to brief me on the map.
Oh, yeah, so, I mean,
She
it's.
was so excited about the fact that she found it. She called for help. You were there, took care of everything, and she says, "All right, I'm going to be out there walking more and more."
Oh, yeah.
Anyway.
Well, I had, sort of anecdotally, the past two of the large dump piles that have been reported to me as of late, one was from this lovely woman, Nancy Wigley. She's part of the Appalachian Mountain Club. Oh, Dale, you met her out at Johns Pond that day. So she was leading a hike at the Mashpee River Woodlands, and she found a big pile of trash and told me about it, and we went to pick it up. Unfortunately, this was the same instance where this was Nancy Church from Webner. She's part of the educational program there, and she was also leading a hike and found trash on the hike. So, I mean, you know, it's really unfortunate in a sense that, you know, this is happening, but at the same time, I mean, people, you know, I suppose need to know in a sense that, yes, this is a real problem, yes, this is happening, we're doing our best, but I mean, you know, it's
Yeah, and when you go
taking the
through,
ghost a little bit
you go
sometimes.
through the enforcement, you know, it goes in the paper, word spreads, you know, and
Yep,
it
absolutely.
becomes a less secure place to go and do that type of activity. So that's, you know, another benefit to the enforcement is that, you know, word gets out that these places are being watched and followed up on, and people are getting caught and fined, and so you start seeing those activity, you know, that type of illegal dumping start to drop off in certain areas, but then of course it pops up in other areas.
Of course, yeah. I think I mean, I could attribute to a million things, but I think there has been a lull lately in any enforcement. So, you know, I suppose, you know, it's just, sorry, like you said, it just starts to progress, unfortunately. But
Yeah.
I haven't really discussed it yet with Drew, but there's a potential that we may want to get it back in the paper.
Yeah.
Just that,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, we're,
I think that should be a constant thing.
yeah, just every
yeah.
other month. Stop
Yeah.
illegal dumping, please.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
So overall a success, you know, in spite of the egregious nature of what had happened. So as far as the Massachusetts Habitat Management Grant that we got from the state, we received funding to do more prescribed burning out at the Holland Mill, Gray Hay Road area, the Pine Barrens out there. They're doing the prescribed burning to improve the habitat for New England cottontail. So we received $24,000. That should be for 2 prescribed burns. Again, the Northeast Forest and Fire Management folks had written the proposal and submitted it. And right now I had sent out a request for quotes for 3 people, but I'm waiting for Northeast Forest and Fire's proposal to go to the town.
People to
Yeah, it's just.
You have to get
just
3,
fulfill the
you have to get 3
procurement
quotes
requirements.
based on the procurement laws.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so we'll take it to chief when we have those proposals, but it'll essentially from there, they'll just have to gauge the conditions until June 30th, which is when the work needs to be done, as to where it would best, where it would be best to do it. So as you know, these things are
Just
very
get
they're very
absolutely
site specific.
I get amazed at the attention for is it the North American cottontail?
New England cottontail, yeah.
I mean, I see one young lady out there every once in a while. She
Mhm.
was in the woods.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
swear
yeah.
she was in there for 6 hours. I just happened to spot her going in. You know, that car was still there. She kind of parks close to my house.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
off she goes.
I wonder if
Yeah.
she was doing the
I saw her
acoustic surveys then too.
Yeah, they're doing
May have been
bat
in the
surveys
building.
out there too.
No, I didn't find much of anything.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very dedicated people to stop them from being listed. But again, the benefits are definitely for other species as well. Species of concern such as the box turtle and the northern long-eared bat, and really a plethora of other species. It really is. It is a habitat that is natural on Cape Cod, but of course, suppression of fires over time, you know, has compromised these habitats. So that's, we're just kind of going through the formalities of that, but that work, I don't anticipate any issues with that work, and they'll make sure to coordinate with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife folks, the tribe, and the state, because we all kind of share property there, again, part of the refuge. And AmeriCorps will be here February 1st and 8th. They're going to backfill a few steps in some areas where, these significant rain events certainly do blow out trail steps very easily, and then they have to get repaired, so we're trying to get to a place where we'll use some backfill with gravel and crushed stone, then it'll make it more of a permanent solution. Recently, they have cleared the Thorpe Trail at Mashpee River Woodlands. I don't expect you to know off the top of your head, but if you park at the Quiniquisette lot and you actually go over the river there and you head south, that's where that trail is. And it was extremely overgrown, but it's a very beautiful trail. You have really great views of the river. It's kind of high on a bluff, and then it ends up meeting up with River Road, which is also part of the river woodlands. And I think, and again, just to, again, reiterate about the videos that, we'll make sure to promote them to the best of our ability, but of course, any help is appreciated, and any suggestions as well on that. And of course, always appreciate those and are open to them as well. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a couple of other things real quick. We're working on mitigation regulation 12 to figure out some language. We're not sure, I have to talk to town council about this, if this should go into the bylaw or in the mitigation regulation, but dealing with mitigation on site constrained, land constrained sites like we had at Timberlane Drive tonight, and what sort of other types of mitigation may be possible, whether it's off-site mitigation or in lieu fees. Barnstable actually has, we've been looking at the town of Barnstable's regulations and having some discussions with the agent there about and this is in their bylaw, that they actually have this written into their bylaw where there are options for either performing mitigation off-site at a different location or paying what they refer to as in lieu fees based on a calculation formula. Similar to that project where the applicant couldn't fit all the plantings on as Waterline Drive, so they donated money to the town's shellfish propagation program. Same sort of idea. If we go to a conservation trust fund or something like that. So Barnstable has a figure that they use in a calculation, and we tried to find out how they came up with that figure, and unfortunately, they can't figure out when at one point in time, way back when, how the figure was arrived at. So we're trying to get that information so we can have a calculation formula that's not just, arbitrary.
Well,
Yeah.
You can cut down on Gatewood for that one.
Yeah. He's retired. Gone. So we're working on that.
It's a difficult thing to do.
Yeah.
And we don't want to wait until we have another one of these gray areas. I mean,
Right.
This one tonight is pretty clear. There just simply wasn't an alternative.
Right.
There's no need for some other mitigation approach. But we've had projects in the past where the owner wanted to make an improvement. He
Right.
wanted to add something to his property that was of value to him, but there really wasn't anything compelling.
Right.
In which case, if he already has a nicely landscaped property with all native vegetation, there needs to be another way.
Yeah, exactly.
There does need to be another way.
So we are working on that, and we'll have more information, and we'll present at future meetings with some ideas, once we get some more research.
It seems like it really gives the commission a lot more discretion too, for any given site to decide between the options of on-site, off-site, or the in lieu calculations.
Yeah.
Which ultimately gives the people of the town more flexibility.
Yeah.
In helping us to preserve the very important conservation values of the town.
Right.
Oh yeah, there's plenty of places that could use, additional, off-site mitigation. There's plenty of opportunity in town to
Sure.
improve the resource areas.
Sure, and we all want everyone to be able to enjoy their property.
Right.
Mhm.
Last thing is, I don't know if you've all received emails from MACC, the Mass Association of Conservation Commissioners, about their upcoming conference on March 3rd, their annual spring conference, or winter conference. So that's coming up. You should all be receiving emails from MACC about updates and their newsletter and those. So that you can sign up online for that. We will pay for any classes that you may be interested in. But just as an FYI that's coming up now. The registration period is open, and if you're interested in taking any of the workshops or classes or certification that they offer, just let us know through email. They're all categorized, the time slots and everything, so you just send us that information and we'll facilitate payment. So
When you guys think of taking a town card down there?
yeah, I think we could do that this year. Yeah. Yeah, it's on a Saturday, so yeah. And like I said, the administrative approval request that you see on your pre-post agenda, I'm going to table that for the next meeting because that's tied into the Papaneset Spit
Let me
project
just say,
there.
particularly our newer members, sure is a well worthwhile day.
Yeah.
If you have the time.
Yeah, it's good. They offer certification classes that there's a pretty wide variety of topics that they cover, from managing conservation lands to conservation budgeting. You know, if you have accounts that you use for certain purposes, you know, garnering volunteers, coastal erosion, wetland plant identification, soil analysis. You know, all these different A to Z, pretty comprehensive. And you get certification letters when some of these workshops.
Vendors that have all kinds of ideas.
Yeah.
And schemes and techniques and stuff that.
Right.
Latest stuff that you can take a look at.
Yeah, so it's pretty informative. Yeah, it's definitely worth going to, and you get free breakfast and lunch out of the deals. Yeah. Just if you're on the fence, that should just push. That's right. Yeah. That's it.